Hello fellow mages, my name's Veity, and in this tutorial I'll be teaching you the Mark and Recall spell. Now, if any of you are fans of the original Elder Scrolls Morrowind game from donkey's years ago, you may have heard of this spell before. It's basically based on that. The entire principle behind the spell is that you can mark a place and then teleport to it at a later date. So let me go ahead and show you a demonstration of this. So this is me in game, and as you can see at the top left we've got the Mark and Recall spell equipped. So if I go ahead and cast this, that creates a little orb just right there. Now if I run away from this location and activate the spell, this will teleport me back to the location at any point in time. The way this spell actually works, I'll take you through it step by step. So step 1, when you actually cast the spell, all it does is summon an orb and it places it at the player's current location. That's all it does. It doesn't have a timer or anything like that, so that orb will happily stay there until you activate it. Now activation, that's when you hit the F key. So if I was to go ahead and push that now, it doesn't do anything. If I was to hit it a second time, it still doesn't do anything. And, well, probably by now, if I hit it a third time, it still won't do anything. In order to actually activate the spell, you have to hit the F key 3 times in rapid succession. So you've got about 3 seconds with which to press that F key. Each time you press the F key, it increases a counter on an if statement, and when this counter reaches 3, as in you've hit the button 3 times, it teleports you back to that location. So now I'll show you how the code actually works and explain it in a little more detail. So this is the code itself behind the script. The way it works is when you first create the spell, it runs a single line of code in using the evaluate Unity script, and the line of code is this little bit here. I'll zoom that in for you guys. So all this does is it gets the orb game object, and then it sets its position to the player's current position. That's all that line of code does. And that's probably the most complicated part of this script. Quite simply because everything else you can drag and drop into here, but this one line of code requires a little bit more knowledge of programming. However, you can just actually write that in yourselves. You can go back and pause the video if you want to look at the line of code again. You can just write that in yourselves and then give it a try. I'll take you through it step by step later on how to actually build this spell from scratch, but let me finish explaining the rest of it first. So you cast the spell and it runs that line of code. So it takes your orb after it's been created and it sets it at the player's current position. Then it creates a new variable called confirm and sets it to 0. Finally it sets the orb's color to pure white. Now that's all the spell does in the beginning. It won't do anything else until you actually hit the F key on your keyboard. So when you actually hit the F key on your keyboard, it runs this activate, and it'll run this every time you hit the F key on your keyboard. So as soon as you hit F, it runs an if statement. An if statement is basically if a condition is true, then run a segment of code. This one is actually an if else statement. So that means if this condition is true, run this line of code. Otherwise, if this condition down here is true, run this line of code. And finally, if neither of those conditions are true, run this line of code, which currently actually does nothing. So to actually explain what it does, if the confirm variable value is set to 2, remember we created this up here and it's set to 0. If the confirm value equals 2, then we want to move the player to the orb's current position. And remember, we set the orb's position to the player's position up here and made it so the orb doesn't move. Well, sorry, no, the orb doesn't move by default because we haven't got any movement controls for the orb. And finally, after the player has moved to the orb's position, it destroys the orb and thus destroys this spell as well. If this condition isn't true, so if confirm equals 1, it'll call a function which is called reset spell after 3 seconds. Now reset spell, all that does is set confirm back to 0. So say you're running around the world, you've cast your mark spell and you want to use your teleport later, but you get into a fight and you need to use some spells that require activates themselves. You just hit F on the keyboard. Now normally that would transport you straight to, your recalled location, but using this method it means you can, hit the F key a couple of times for different spells, and this spell won't be affected unless you hit it 3 times in rapid succession. So if we, as I demonstrated before, we've hit F once, it doesn't do anything. We hit S2 twice, it runs this line of code, although you won't see it do anything. And if you hit F3 for the 3rd time, it'll actually teleport you to the location. However, say we've hit it twice and then we wait 3 seconds, this line of code will kick in and the spell will reset to 0. Finally, the last bit of this if statement is every time it runs this, it increases confirm by 1. So basically every time you hit the F key, after it's run all this code up here, it just increases confirm by 1. It increases confirm by 1. So this line basically says set confirm to whatever confirm currently is plus 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and give creating this spell a go. So if you go to the top left and click new, and then select blocky instead of JavaScript and assign it to one of the elements. Now remember, all this does when you click fire or water or air, as I've chosen, is when you're searching in your spell library, you can sort through those categories to find it. This doesn't actually set the magic that you're using to air, it's just purely for actually finding your spell in your library. And then finally, if you set the name of the spell, I've just called it VS Mark and Recall, and click next. So this is what you're going to get when you first create your spell, and the on create is when you cast it, on hit is when the orb hits something, but we're not actually going to be using on hit for this spell, so just right click that and click delete 2 blocks. We're not going to be using the speed of the orb because our orb is going to be stationary when it's first cast, so if you just right click that line as well and click delete block. So we'll delve straight into the most complicated part first, and after this the rest is quite straightforward. We're going to use the evaluate Unity script. So that is in debug, and evaluate Unity script, just drag that and slot it into onCreate. Next we'll need the box to actually write in the code, so if you click text and then grab this one at the top with the 66s and 99s, just grab that and slot that into that puzzle piece there. Now what this is actually used for is if there's something that if you want to write a piece of code which you can't find in these options that you're given, it allows you to actually write the code as if you were writing in the Unity editor itself. So this is the same kind of thing they use to make the games. I mean, it doesn't look like this. It actually uses something a lot quite similar to this. But yeah, this is just the blocky method of writing a more complicated piece of code if you need something that's not displayed in here. So actually writing it, it has to be written exactly like this, or there's a very good chance it won't work. So it's orb.game object, that's a capital O for object, dot transform dot position equals orb dot get player, capital P for player, and position, and then opening and closing brackets and semicolon, and that's it. So next you're going to want to create a new variable. Now a variable is basically just a piece of information that you might want to access later. So a very basic example of this is if you take your name and you wanted to put it in game and have a message with your name display, then you could write it out. But say you have multiple lines of code that need to access your name, you'd create a variable and store your name in it so that you can access it later, rather than having to write your name each and every time. Okay, so variables, set item to, if you drag that into onCreate, and then in the drop down box where it says item, click that and click rename variable. Then we're going to call this one confirm, so there we go. Just type that in and click done. Now that's created a variable called confirm, but currently it's not actually got any information in it. So if we go to math and then grab the one at the top which has a 0 in it, just drag that in. Now we're just going to leave that as 0. We could change that to something else and that would set confirm to whatever number we specified, but for now we just need it to be 0. And lastly, this is purely up to you guys, but if you go to orb and properties and drag the one that says set orb color, you can change that to whatever you like. Personally, I quite like the white color for the orb, so I'm just going to set that to completely white. And that's the on create spell done. So if we were to cast this now, all it would do is create an orb at the player's presence, but it wouldn't do anything. So I'll show you that now. If I equip it and cast that, it's create an orb, but it's not going to do anything when I hit the F button. So going back into this, next we need to write in the code for when this spell is activated. That's when the user hits the F key. So if you go to the top of this list to control and grab the onActivate function, just drag that in there. And we're going to need to use something called an if statement now. So that is in logic and if statements. And we've got about 2 conditions we need to use, so no, sorry, we use this one at the bottom because we need it to do different things depending on the value we're given. So grab that one and just slot that into onActivate. So the very first line is if something equals something, we need it to do something. So we need to tell it what we're actually going to be checking, which variable we need to check before we actually do something. So we use confirm. So if you go to your list on the left again and go to variables, and now confirm will actually be here. So just grab the one that says confirm, and if you pull this to the side for now, because I'm not actually going to slot it into there, instead we're going to use sorry, some logic. So if you go into Boolean and grab this one at the top and slot that in there, now we can take our confirm variable and drag that into the first option. So currently this says if confirm equals blank. So we actually need that to be a numeric value. So if you go to maths and grab this top one, drag that in there and change that to 1. Oh, sorry, if you change that to 2. So if confirm equals 2, we want it to do this line of code. So what do we want it to do? Well, we want it to move the player to the position of the orb that we defined up here. So go to Earth Powers and grab this one here, move player world object. Just slot that into that little line there. Now this, every time this is run, it's going to require 50 Earth Magic. So if you go to the top up here and specify 50, if you had that as 0, then this spell wouldn't work because you need to assign the magic to it. Just move this down a bit for you. Okay, so the next part of the if statement. Oh, no, sorry, we need to add in one more part to this line here, and it's to destroy the orb. So once we have moved the player to the orb's location, the orb is no longer useful, so just destroy it. So to do that, go all the way up to control, and let me zoom out a bit. Control and destroy orb. Just grab that and slot that in under the move one. Okay, so next we're going to create the bit where we reset the spell. So this section is when the user hits F on their keyboard, it runs a line of code and it'll reset the spell if they haven't pressed F twice more within 3 seconds. So to do that, we go to write another logic statement like this. So go to Boolean and grab this one again, slot that in. Oh, nope, sorry, that's the wrong one, so just delete that. Sorry, another way to do it is just to copy this, in fact. So right click that and click duplicate, and then we can just drag this in, and we'll change that from 2 to 1. So if confirm equals 1, then we want it to run this line of code. Now the reason I'm doing it this way is so that we only want this function that's going to be in here to be run once. We don't want it to be run multiple times, kind of thing. There's no point running it multiple times, in the same instance at least. So let's go to functions and let's create this function first. So go to functions and grab this very top one, just drag that in anywhere down here, and let's give it a name. So let's call that reset spell. Then in reset spell we need to change confirm. So I'm gonna just right click up here where we've got set confirm and duplicate that, and then drag that in here. So that's going to be exactly the same as it was at the beginning. It's just going to set confirm to 0. Oh. Okay, so for actually running this function that we just created, we go to control at the top and grab the call function after delay and just slot that in there. Now for this to work we need to specify the name of the function. So if you go to where it says function, just click there, delete it and type in reset spell. And then choose the delay and set that to 3. So if this line of code is run, it'll wait 3 seconds before calling the reset spell function. This else is going to be blank because we don't need it to do anything else. The last thing we need to do is to set confirm to confirm +1. So we need to increment confirm in order for all these conditions to be met at certain different times. So if we go to variables and set confirm, set confirm to, and then yep, this one here, drag that puzzle piece, slot it in, then go back to variables and get confirm again, drag that into the first one, and then go to math and grab the top one as well and change that 0 to 1. So that line again basically reads else set confirm to confirm +1, and that's it. The spell should be complete. So if we give this a go, remember that's our previous orb which doesn't do anything, so that won't be affected by this spell. If I hit, well, cast a spell, there we go, and then run off, hit F 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and it hasn't worked. Okay, that's always good. Now we get to see why it hasn't worked. So hit escape again and let's take a look at this. So we got 50th magic assigned. We got set confirm to 0, set all color to white. If confirm equals 2, move player to orb position and then destroy the orb. Otherwise, if confirm equals 1, call the function reset spell, and that is spelled correctly after 3 seconds. Otherwise, set confirm to confirm +1. So I found the problem. What we did was we entered in the set confirm to confirm in the else statement, but what we actually need to do is drag that to outside of this if statement. So if you've done that and give it a try, it should now work. 1, 2, 3. Yep, there you go, you've been teleported back. So hopefully that's given you guys a good insight into creating a marker and a call spell, showing you how to drag and drop stuff in, and if you're new to this then hopefully you understand how to use block creating a bit more easier. I'm just going to call it visual scripting, that sounds better to me. So yeah, good luck, have fun. I strongly encourage you to mess around with variables, and try and break this code as much as possible. One of the best ways to learn how to program it is to write something, and then when you've got it working, to actually mess around with it and break it and see what happens when you do different things to understand why that happens. So yeah, good luck guys, have fun, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.